You can go back and I can click on any of these problems that I want to over here on the right-hand side. All right, so I'm going to go back to the first question. In fact, I always think it's a good idea to just skip to the questions that you feel more comfortable with. All right, so question 1 says graph the ordered pair from the table to the given graph. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to go over here to my virtual whiteboard, if it'll open. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and plot these points. Now I want you to recall, and I don't know where you learned this, maybe it was the 7th grade, where each ordered pair is written with an X first, followed by a Y. The first value, your X, is your left-right value. Your Y is your up-down value. So the first point, this 0, 2, so I start here at the origin. I'm going to go 0 spaces left, right, and then 2 spaces up. So 1, 1, 2. So we're looking at this point right here. Let's look at the next one. Next one, we have 2, 8. So 2 spaces to the right. If it's -2, then I go the other way, right? I go left. And if it's positive, I go right. So I'm going to go 2 spaces to the right, and then 8 spaces up. Here's 5, here's 10. 2 less than that would give me this point right here. The next one says 3, 11. 3, 11. So 3 is my left, right. So I'm going to go 3 over to here, and then 11 spaces up. Here's 5, here's 10. So one more would be 11 right here. And the next one is 4, 14. 4, 14. 4 is my left, right. So I'm going to go over 4 to 4 right here. And then here's my 5, and I have 10 and 15. Well, 14th one last, so that would be this point right here. Do I have that as a choice as one of these graphs? Is that even a choice? So I'm going to look at my choices here. I'm going to scroll down. Did that look like any of my choices? Did that sort of look like this one right here? So that's the one I'm going to select. And then I go on to the next one. Any questions about the first one? Okay, number 2. So now we have a check mark saying I answered that question. If you didn't answer it, then you would still have a question mark next to it. So you can go back. If you end up skipping a question, you can go back and look at any of the previous questions. All right, so next one, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with an ordered pair. We have an X and a Y. We have 0, 10. What does the X do? What direction is the X? That's my left-right direction, right? What's the Y? That's my up-down value. So I'm going 0 spaces left, right. I'm going to start at the origin. 0 spaces left, right, and then 10 up. Well, if this is 5 and this is 10, we're looking at a point right there on the graph. All right, so direct me. This is our next coordinate point is 2, 6. Dominic, direct me. I'm going to start at the origin. Where do I go? Isn't it left, right first? We're on this one right here. Yep. So 2 to the right, 1, 2. That's 2. And then and up 6. So this is 5 right here. So one more than that will be 6. So that's going to be this point right here. Right there. Okay, the next one we have 3, 4. Mary, direct me. I'm going to start at the origin. If I start at the origin right here, what direction do I go for this coordinates here? All right, so first don't we go left, right first? All right, so we're trying to plot this point right here. It's positive. If I go left, it's negative. So I go positive to the right by 3. I start here at the origin, and then I go 3 to the left, to the right. Sorry, and then how many? Yep, so that would be this point right here. This is 5, so 1 less than 5 is 4. So that will give me that point right here. So these are the points I have so far. I have this point here, I have this point here, and I have this point here. Let's look at the next one. The next one is 5, 1. The next one is 5, oh, sorry, 5, 0. I read that wrong. How about Zayden? Zayden, direct me. My next coordinates is 5, 0. I'm starting at the origin. Direct me. What do I do? Isn't the first X value our left, right value? Okay, so left, right. So we're going to go 5 to the right. So here's 4, here's 5. That's 5 right there. And then, yeah, just mark it because it's 0 spaces up or down. So there we have these points right here. So which one of those gives me that line right there, that those dots from 10 all the way, so 0, 10 all the way to 5, 0. Scrolling through here. Isn't that this one right here? Okay, there we go. Took care of that one. Let's look at that. Let's move on to the next one. We can see once we select something and move on, it's been checked off because I gave an answer. If you don't give an answer, it'll still be a question mark. In fact, let's try it. Let's just move on without even selecting anything. Well, now we're on 4 without, and 3 is still empty. So we can go back to 3. I can just click on 3 right here, and it'll take me back to 3 when I want to, when I'm ready for it. All right. If f of x equals 3x minus 2 and g of x equals negative 2x plus 1, evaluate the following. I'm trying to find f of negative 3. How does that make sense? How do I find an f of negative 3? What do I do? Maya, any ideas? Yes. Dominic, do you have an idea of how to do this? How? Oh, hold on a second. Aiden, you have a question? Oh, okay. I'll have you do the next one. Dominic, how do you do this one? Yeah, in parentheses here, we have an x, and then over here in parentheses, we have a negative 3, implying that negative 3 is the x. Yeah, we want to use this one because it's telling us we're using f of x, or our f function. So we're using our f function, so use our f of x equals 3x minus 2, and x equals negative 3. That's what this implies right here. So let's plug that in and see what we get. We have f. Anytime I see an x, I'm going to replace it with negative 3. So I have f of negative 3 equals 3 times negative 3 minus 2. Order of operations. What first? Do we multiply first or do we subtract? We multiply. So we're going to multiply this here. What is 3 times negative 3? Negative 9. So I have negative 9 minus 2. What is negative 9 minus 2? I'm in debt $9 and then I spend another $2. Negative 11. So f of 3 equals negative 11. F of negative 3, I apologize. F of negative 3 is negative 11. That's this answer right here. Question? Yes. All right, so I'm going to select negative 11 and we will continue on. Let's look at the next problem, number 4. So we have the same setup. We have f of x equals 3x minus 2, and we have this g of x equals negative 2x plus 1, and it says evaluate the following, f of 0. Aiden, how do I do this one? Yep. Okay. So hold on. So what you're doing is you're saying that based upon what's given here, x has to be what? Yeah, x has to be 0. X has to be 0. So I'm going to substitute that in right there. I have f of 0 equals, go ahead, Aiden. 3. Nice. So I have 3 times 0 minus 2, which is what? Louder? Negative 2. Yeah, so f of 0 equals negative 2. That's what f of 0 is. It's negative 2. So we'll just go ahead and mark that here, -2. Yes. So I'm going to mark -2 and we will move on. And number 4 should be marked off on our list now of things that we had to do. All right, number 5. Number 5. Maya, how do we do this one? Oh, number 4, let's go back. Number 4, actually down here at the bottom, it gives us a choice to go to previous, right? So number 4, when we plug in 0, in fact, didn't we see that here? When I plug in f of, oh, number 3. Okay, let's see if I can go far enough back where I get rid of all of this mess here. Awesome. Is that 3? Yeah, it's 3. So what I did is I took this -3, I plugged it in here. You see that we did that over here for all of our x values. X is -3 to get -11. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. Maya, any ideas how to do this one? What's that? Oh, perfect. So that will give us, so this would be really helpful to do this one together. All right, so any ideas, Maya, of what this says? Does this give me any information? First of all, it tells me to use which of these. Should I use f of x or g of x? Yeah, I should use, if I'm trying to find g of -1, it tells me to use our g of x function. What else is it telling me? What is this -1? What is that? What value is that -1? Do you see in parentheses, I have this x in here? And that x has been replaced with what? Implying that the x equals, yeah, the x equals -1. So that tells me the x equals -1. I'm going to use this equation. Maya, why am I using this equation and not this equation? Because I'm asking for g of -1. That's not f of -1. It's g of -1. So I'm going to use that function. So we're going to use this function. I have g of x equals -2x plus 1. Maya, now what? What do I do? If x equals -1, what do I do with that? Yeah, replace all the x's with -1. So that gives me g of -1 equals -2 times -1 plus 1. How do we solve for this mess? Maya, what do we do? Order of operations, what first? Do we multiply or do we add? Yeah, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We are going to multiply before we add. So we're going to multiply that mess there. That gives me -2 times -1. What is that negative times a negative? What is that negative times? What does that mean, negative? That gives me what? A positive. Yeah, it gives me a positive. It gives me a positive value. Negative times a negative is a positive. Think about it like this. Even English does that, right? What if Mr. Hall says, I don't want you not to do your homework? I'm doing 2 negatives. I don't want you not to do your homework. What am I saying? I don't, that's a negative. I don't want you not, that's another negative. I don't want you not to do your homework. What does that mean? To do your homework. Yeah, so 2 negatives make a positive. I don't want you not to do your homework. It means I want you to do your homework. Even in English, we have 2 negatives make a positive. All right, so what does this become? What's a negative times? I have -2 times -1, which is? What's -2 times -1? Jace? What's -2 times -1? I thought a negative times a negative gave us a positive. Is that, are you adding? What's 1 times 2? Isn't it? It's just 2, yeah. And so what is a -1 times -2? Yeah, it's also 2. It's also 2 because a negative times a negative is a positive. So that's also 2. So that gives me 2. I still have this 2 plus 1, which is 3. The answer is 3. The correct answer is 3. So I'm going to go back over here. We're going to go to -4. Let's go to the next one. Problem number 5. The answer was 3. There we go. Oops. And we move on to the next one. Number 6. How do I do, Hannah, how do I do this one? It says if f of x equals 3 to the power of x, what is the value of f of 4? How in the world do I do that one? Hannah, any ideas? Okay, what does this imply? It implies x equals what? And yeah, in parentheses over here, we have an x, and that x has now been replaced with a 4. Maya, please pay attention. Implying then that x equals 4. If x equals 4, then let's take that x equals 4 and plug it in for x. So we have f of 4 equals 3 to the power of 4. So what does this mean? Yeah, it's 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Yep. Now you can certainly use a calculator if you want to, but this means by the definition of an exponent, it means 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Well, what's 3 times 3? 9, and this other 3 times 3 is also 9. What's 9 times 9? The answer is 81. The answer is 81. Is this confusing? It's not too bad. I don't think this is too bad, but you will probably have to do some studying to make sure that we learned everything. But I'm going to go to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. Number 7. Number 7. All right. So this one, we have this table. It says, use the table to answer the following question. When f of n equals 4, what is the value of n? And what is the value of f of n minus 1? So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. We'll import that into our virtual whiteboard. Let's try to find, what does this piece here mean? What is this piece here? It says when f of n equals 4, what is n? Well, f of n is right here. So when f of n is 4, which would be here, then n equals what? Question. Yes, let's go back to number 6. This one? Yeah. You just wanted to look at it, or do you have a question about it? All right, cool. Now just let's make sure we understand all these concepts so that when we take the test on Wednesday, we'll be able to do these problems again. Gage, did you get it? Yeah. All right, awesome. Okay, so we're back here. So it says here when f of n equals 4, well, this is f of n. So when f of n equals 4, what is n? For now, when f of n is 4, what is n? Yeah, it's 2. It's 2. It's 2. We see that right there. It's 2. So this is n equals 2. So what is the value of f of n minus 1? We'll take, if n is 2, let's plug that in. So that gives us f of 2 minus 1, which is f of what? Is f of 1. What is f of 1? Yeah, this is my n. N equals 1. So let's go over here to my n equals 1. So the answer is -3. So the answer is, so we have f of 1 equals -3. So let's scroll down here. We have 2 and -3. Where's 2 and -3? Let's go back over here. 2 and right there. The last one. It's the last one right here. Question. Yep. Sebastian, do you understand this? I'm sorry, it's Octavia, right? Oh, Sebastian, are you good? Do you understand this?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's scroll. Let's continue to the next problem. And the next problem looks like this. Use the table to answer the following question. I read that wrong. When f of n equals 39, what is the value of n? Nick, when f of n equals 39, what is n? Yeah, let's go. It is, you're correct. When f of n is 39, that's here, then our answer, our n is 7. I agree with you. So this is n equals 7. Now it says, what is the value of f of n minus 1? Well, if n is 7, then let's plug that in back into here. That gives us f of 7 minus 1, which is f of what? F of 6. What is f of 6? It's 32. Yeah. So f of that means that the n is 6. Our new n is 6. So that's here. Our new n is 6. So that means our f of 6 is 32. So that gives us 32. The answer is 32. So we have these two answers, 7 and 32. 7 and 30. Right there. There's our answer right there. Dominic, what do you think? Is this confusing or is this okay, do you think? You got 100? Awesome. Yeah, the test isn't going to be it's going to be similar. It's not going to be identical, it'll be similar. But if you know how to do the pretest, you'll do fine on the test. All right, here's another one. Question. Yes, the actual test has the same amount of questions. So there'll be 16 questions. All right, let's look at the next one. It says, I'll copy this. We'll import this into our virtual whiteboard. And then it says here, when f of n equals 18, what is n? What do you think, Carell? If f of n is 18, if f of n is 18, what is n? Yeah, here's our f of n. We'll go across till we find 18 right here. That means our n has to be 4 then. So n equals 4. I agree with you. Now, if n is 4, let's plug that into here. So I have f of 4 plus 1, which is f of what? F of 5. Well, what is f of 5? F of 5 is 25. Yeah, f of 5 is 25. So these are the two answers I'm looking for, 4 and 25, which is this one right here. The first one here. Questions about this? All right, so that's the first one. Let's go back over here, select, and move on to the next one. Oh shoot, I made a mistake. I wanted to change that. Can I go back and change it if I want to? Or am I stuck? I can go back. It says here previous. If I want to, I can go back and change it if I want to. Or I can even click on any of these questions here and it'll take me back to any of those, right? So I can change this anytime if I want to before I submit. Let's go on to the next one. All right, the next one says, write an explicit formula. What does explicit mean? Recursive means what? It depends on the previous term. So I'm not dependent on the previous term. What problems here say it depends on the previous term? Which of these answers depend on the previous term? Yeah, it looks like 2. It says f of n minus 1. That means previous term. So I already know just looking at this that this can't be the answer. This can't be the answer because both of those are recursive. They are not explicit. All right, what kind of equation, what kind of sequence do we have here? Is this arithmetic or geometric? Yeah, when I have I have 6, 11, 16, 21. How am I getting to the next term? Adding 5. Okay, adding 5 plus 5 plus 5. So we're looking at something. So what we could do is we could go back to the 0. So this is my first term. Here's my second term. Here's the third term. Here's the fourth term. And if this is arithmetic, I'm going to use my y equals mx plus b, right? What's my move? What's the move? It's 5. We're moving plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. So I have y equals 5x. What's my begin? Yeah, I have to go back to my 0th term. The 0th term, if I'm adding 5 to each step, I need to subtract 5 to get to my 0th term. So that would be 1. So the answer is plus 1. So the answer would be right here. Number 4. Any questions about this? Okay, number 4. Let's go ahead and mark that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. It was that one. Question. You can go to the bathroom. Yes. All right, let's look at the next one. Number 11, it says write a recursive. Well, a recursive depends on the previous terms, which means I have to use, if this is a recursive equation, I have to use previous term. I have to use previous term. In mathematics, how do I write previous term? F of n minus 1. So there's only 2 possibilities here, either this one or this one. Well, which one do you think it is? The first or the second? Louder? Second. The second. Why is it the second one? Because that one says that it has. Yeah, we're saying the previous term plus 5. And that's what we saw previously, that we're just adding plus 5, plus 5, plus 5, plus 5 at each one. It also says that our first term, our first term is 6, and our first term is 6. So yeah, the answer has to be this second one right here. It has to be, because it says, it even says that. It says in mathematics, it says the now term is the previous term plus 5. That's what's happening here anyway, plus 5. And then our first term is 6. That's what it says. So it has to be that answer. So I'm going to go back over here and select that one and move on. Number 12 looks like this. Okay. It says explicit. It says explicit, so that means we can rule out which possible answers. Yeah, we can rule this one out, and we can rule this one out. Why? Those are recursive. It says previous term, it says previous term, that says previous term plus 3, and that says previous term times 3. So those are both recursive, not explicit. So I can rule both of those out. Is this geometric or arithmetic? How do you know it's geometric? It has a common ratio. We have 3, 9, 27, 81. We are multiplying by a common ratio, So that means it has to be geometric, which means I can rule out all of them except for what? This one here has to be what? Arithmetic or geometric? Arithmetic, and this one? Arithmetic. You can rule both of those out already. Or we can use our equation. What's our equation for geometric? So we have y equals our 0th term times our ratio. Yeah, to the power of n or x or whatever else. Yeah. Now, I have this weird thing up here that says n minus 1. Well, what's our shortcut? If I don't go with my 0th term, if I go with my first term, what's the rule when I go with my first term? If I go f of 1, then what? Times the common ratio to the power of n minus 1. And that's what's happening here. We're going with our first term of 3 times our common ratio of 3 to the power of n minus 1. That's what's happening there. It's our shortcut. is our shortcut answer. Okay, we're good with that? Okay, let's look at the next one. So we went with our shortcut answer. There we go. Okay, number 13. We have this mess here. Right, it says recursive, which means I can rule out which ones. Yeah, those are explicit. So it's either just two answers, two possible answers. Which one is it? It's the second one. How do you know it's the second one? It tells us our first term. Both of those say the same first term of 1. It's our common ratio, right? Our common ratio is times 3. Yes, Aiden.
I was going to say that it tells the common ratio.
It does tell us our common ratio. It says right here, we're taking, this actually says previous term, and then times 3. So our previous term is 3 times 3 gives us 9. Now our previous term is 9. 9 times 3 gives us 27. Now our previous term is 27. 27 times 3 is 81. So that's our formula, our recursive formula for finding our sequence. Cool. Okay, so the answer has to be this. Let's go back. Previous term times 3, and our first term is 3. So go click on that one, go to the next one. Question? Yes. All right, let's look at the next one, explicit. This is explicit, so I can rule out which ones. Yeah, we can rule out this one, and we can rule out this one, because both of these say previous term. And an explicit formula does not use the previous term. We can solve directly. We can solve for any term directly. Okay, so is this, I guess the next question is it geometric or arithmetic? How am I getting from -2 to -4, and then from -4 to -8, and then from -8 to -16? Yeah, it looks like we're multiplying by 2. So we have a common ratio then, a common ratio, which means we're not going to use y equals mx plus b. We're not going to use that because that is what we use for arithmetic sequence, which means we can rule out what? If we're not going to use y equals mx plus b, we can rule out what? Yeah, we can rule out that one. We can rule out that one. Both of those are for arithmetic. And so the answer has to be this one. Or let's use our equation. What's the equation for the explicit equation for geometric? It's f of 0 times our common ratio to the power of n. Now I don't, it says here n minus 1, which means we're going to use our shortcut. What's the shortcut? First term? Yep. So what's the first term? Yeah, it's -2. So we have -2 times our ratio. What's the ratio? Times 2. And to the power of n minus 1. Yep. There we go. So it's the last one. It is our last one. Okay, move on to the next one. All right. So number 15. For this sequence, -2, -4, -8, -16, what is the recursive formula? Recursive means what? Means the previous term, which means I can rule out what? Yeah, I can rule out 1, 2, and 3 because those are explicit, not recursive. I don't see anything in there that says previous term. So recursive means previous term. What in math says previous term? F of n minus 1. We can see that in both of those. So those are both possible answers. All right, if my sequence, what was the rule that we have for this? Yeah, it's times 2. So which one says previous term times 2? Is that the Is that the second to last or the last one? It's second to last. So that has to be the answer right there. And it even says here, our first term is -2. So our first term is -2 right there. Okay, I think we only have one more. All right. Go ahead and copy this. Take it to my question. Yes.
So on the last one, we did like the 2 parentheses 2 and n-1. That would like what would be in that one we're doing like
Recursive.
yeah.
So remember that there's 2 types of equations I want you to learn. There's, in fact, I think this would probably be helpful if we do this. Let's do this. Okay. Let's do a chart. This chart, we're going to say we have recursive, that doesn't just say, it doesn't look like it says recursive, it looks sloppy. Recursive, explicit. So there's 2 different equations I want you to learn. There's also 2 different kinds of sequences I want you to learn. What were the 2 types of sequences I wanted you to learn? Yeah. Arithmetic and geometric. All right. What is the arithmetic? Let's do a arithmetic and recursive. Arithmetic and recursive. If I have something, let's do like this. 2, 5, 8. Is it 11? 3. Okay. What's the recursive for this? Yeah, then equals 2. Yep. That is recursive. Why is it recursive? Because it depends on the previous term. We have to literally take 2 plus 3 gives us 5. Now our previous term is 5. 5 plus 3 gives us 8. Now our previous term is 8. 8 plus 3 gives us 11. And there we go. That's how we come up with our sequence. Okay, let's do the same thing for geometric. What about this one? Okay, this gives me f of n times 3. Yep. Both of these are recursive because they depend on the previous term. Okay, let's do the same thing for explicit. If it's explicit, then we're doing the same sequence, 2, 5, 8, 11, because this is arithmetic. What is the explicit equation for this? Plus what? -1, because you went back and found the first term. So what we're literally doing is we're using that y equals mx plus b. Yep. For explicit arithmetic, you're using y equals mx plus b. You're going back and you're finding the 0th term of -1. Okay, what about geometric? Geometric, let's do the same one. We have this 5, 15, 45. F of n equals. So how did we get from one step to the next? Right, f of 5. Yeah, if we're going to go with our first term, then we need to subtract 1 from our exponent. If we go with our 0th term, then we don't have to subtract anything. So our equation then is, I guess these would be our equations of I guess our equations would be right here. Let's write our common ratio here instead. Does that make any more sense, or is that still confusing? So we have 2 different equations we have to learn for 2 different sequences. 2 different equations for 2 different sequences. All right, let's go back to our test. All right, recursive. Are we good with the recursive here? Okay, I'm going to go to number 16, the last question. A bacterial population triples every hour. A petri dish starts with 30 bacterial cells. If the population continues to increase at the same rate, how many cells will be in the dish in 8 hours? Let's write an equation. So let's come up with a table first. Here is, these are going to be in hours, and these will be cells. And we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. How many cells are we going to have initially at time 0? How many? Is it 10? Yeah, we have 30. We're going to start with 30. And then it says that what happens every hour? It triples. Triples means what? Times what? 30. So that gives us 90. Does that look right to you? 90. And then it triples again. 270. And it triples again. What's an equation for this? I guess we could just keep on doing that until we found the 8th hour, right? We could just keep on doing that until we find the 8th hour. Or we can write our equation. Is this sequence, is it geometric or exponential? I mean, geometric or arithmetic? It's geometric. So we're going to use this equation of f of n equals our 0th term times, yeah, to the power of n. Yep. What's our 0th term? 30. What's our ratio? To the power of n. Yep. And so we're trying to find our f of n. So it says here, after 8 hours, what do I do with 8? Yeah, we plug that in for n. So I have 30 times 3 to the power of 8. You can throw that into our calculator. Remember to use this. This is how you have to write it in your calculator. 30 times 3, and then we have to use what's called a caret. That's our caret. Our caret, and then 8. Write it like that. We do have to get used to calculator skills. So I have 30 times 3 to the power of 8. And I'm getting, this is the number I'm getting. I'm getting 196,830, which is this one here. So that's our answer. Do you think bacterial cells grow that fast? Some even grow faster. Some even grow faster than that. So, in fact, imagine when you get the cold, right? It takes about, once you get the virus, it takes about 24 hours and then you get sick. Then your blood is so overwhelmed with that virus that it makes you sick. About 24 hours and there are just thousands and thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of cells in your blood. Hundreds of thousands, maybe? I don't know. I don't know, I have to do the research, but that's why you feel sick, because your whole, those bacterial, or in this case, viral cells, they increase so rapidly and overwhelm your blood. And that's why you get sick. And then it takes your white blood cells, that's your army. Your army is the white blood cells that have to attack the virus or the bacteria to finally kill it off and protect your body. So let's go back to the test here. And what did we say the answer was? It was this one right here. All right, and now we submit. Please be 100, please be 100. Did Mr. Hall get 100? I don't know. 16 out of 16, yay, I got 100. And then it says retake. So we could keep on doing a retake until we finally understand all the concepts. It also, by looking, once you submit, by looking at all of your answers, it should give you information on how much more studying you need to do and in what categories. Now we've gone through how many modules, like 10 modules so far. So some of these, if something is confusing to you, like recursive and explicit, you might want to go back to a previous quiz where you had to do those problems and retake that quiz. Even if you got 100%, it might be worthwhile to go back